Hi everyone, welcome to Actions on Claims Appeals webinar. This webinar covers information for fee-for-service Medicare appeals. We will provide information for those that are new to Medicare and seeking to learn more or to review the process information. My goal is to meet your needs by having every pre-submitted question answered, but then answering the questions you put into the chat as well. That's our goals today. My name is Tom Ryan. I'm with Provider Outreach and Education. I'll be your presenter. Today, I'm joined by Aline from my team. She's going to go help monitor that chat. She's going to answer any problems or questions. She's going to put some tips in there for you, things like that. So please feel free to place any questions that you have in the chat as you would like to. A couple of housekeeping things for you. First, if you would like the presentation for today, please go to our training center. I'm going to have Aline put a direct link to the live events page. This is where the slide deck is available at. The training center, though, is on our website. What we do is post all of our different pieces of information, including the slide deck, into the live events page. This does list our upcoming education. What we'll do, though, is later today or tomorrow morning, take that down. What we will then do is post the encore presentation or the recording of this presentation. Once we do that, it will be available for 60 to 90 days. But along with that recording, as a player on our website, we'll also go ahead and post this back up. Back up being the presentation that you can download right now today. So that presentation is something that is available to you should you want it. If you don't want it, great. I will let you know that I will take questions in the chat. I would recommend that you put them in as they come through. We have built various points to stop and take those questions to get you your answers. I also want to remind you that after the event, I'm going to ask you to take a survey. I'm going to ask you to give us your opinion. I'm going to ask you to tell me how I can improve. How can we do better? It's not just about this webinar, but it's about overall WPS and what can we do. So please make sure that you take that survey. We'll talk more about that in just a little while. A couple of things to keep in mind. This material was current and accurate at the time that we put the presentation together. I verified as much of it as I could this morning. Everything still looked good and was accurate as of this morning. That doesn't mean it can't change. So with that said, I will answer the questions based on the information and the facts that you gave. I will answer the questions as of what is current right now. So again, if you want the most current information, please go to the CMS website. This is going to have your current rules, regulations, findings, all those types of things. That's going to be on the CMS website, and that's cms.gov. Our website does contain guidance and links to the CMS website, so it may be a helpful resource to get you where you need, but the official information is on the CMS website. What are we going to talk about today? And the first thing we're going to try to do is to increase your knowledge on the Medicare appeals process. We will focus on fee-for-service appeals, levels 1 through 5, but we will highlight more on level 1, and I'll explain why that goes as we get through. So we will start with some of the appeals basics. This is to answer questions that you asked of us, such as, can you review the process? Or, I'm new to the appeals and I don't even know where to start. Also, which claims require appeals? So that's why we're going to put some basics in here and get started there. We'll move on to level 1 issues and tips. Again, this is level 1 and we'll talk more about that. Last, I do have resources listed separately here, but throughout I may stop and go through some different resources. Those resources may again help you as you begin to understand this appeals process. So let's get going. Let's start with some of the basic information. This first section is designed to be general in nature. It really is designed to give you that basic high-level overview that some of you are asking me for. I will tell you that I did have some people say they were new or they're not familiar with the Medicare appeals process. So before I can get into too much in-depth information, I have to get them caught up. I have to get them on the same page as the rest of us. So if you would like to just listen in, you're going to get some basic appeals information and we'll go ahead and get started from there. All right, so what are we first talking about when we talk about appeals? Well, let's start by defining it. The appeal is an action taken by any party that the initial determination affects. If they disagree with how we process the claim, coverage, or payment decisions by Medicare. I want you to notice a couple of things I said here. Not necessarily on this slide, but one is processed a claim. The claim has to be adjudicated for an appeal to kick in. If it is not an adjudicated claim, it is not going to have appeal rights. It's not part of the claim process. That's part of the claim determination. It has to be adjudicated. It has to be processed. So depending on what's going on, you may or may not have appeal rights. We'll talk more about identifying those in just a few moments. One other thing is you'll hear me use the word claim appeal, but don't forget that an appeal also applies to an overpayment request. So an overpayment request is where we're asking for money back. If you disagree that we owe you money, you will file an overpayment appeal. Do not file a claim appeal. If you file a claim appeal, it may already have the timeframes and things passed, so you're not going to get that considered. Please make sure you're using the correct terminology. So basically, it's when someone who is party to, and we'll define that in just the next slide, party to the initial determination or the overpayment disagrees with what happened. And so now you're going to ask us to look at what we did. So what types of things could you disagree about? Well, how about the coverage for a health service or supply? Like, you think it's medically necessary, we denied it as not being, you can appeal that. Some situations you can appeal the amount of a payment. Now others you cannot, it really just depends. Things you can't appeal, the amount applied to deductible. Either the deductible applies or it doesn't. So that's not going to be an appealable amount. Now I say that, and the reason I put that in is because sometimes the patients, they appeal anything they want, and we will look at it. We will make sure it's processed correctly and verify all that information. So while a provider represents a certain party that could file to an appeal, they don't get the same appeal rights as the patients. And I'm sure most of us have seen appeals come in that are for things that we don't even know what the patient's really appealing. They just wrote it and said, we're going to appeal this, so we'll do the best we can with that. One thing that people have asked about, I want to make this very clear, an initial determination does not count when we say this wasn't filed to the correct payer. That's not an initial determination. There was no payer determination made. In other words, we didn't say this was paid, not paid, denied. It's just, hey, you need to file it correctly. So if it's a file it correctly, it doesn't have appeal rights. Okay. So again, overpayment and claim appeals both follow the same 5 levels and the same processes. I will highlight where things are different and what's going on. One question we got is, how does the reopening fit into the appeals process? A reopening is not an appeal. A reopening is a different process. We'll get more into that based on the questions, but I want to make that very clear. If you're here to learn about a reopening and how that process works and why it doesn't work or does work for you, this is not the course for you. This is about the Medicare appeals process for fee-for-service appeals. Okay. So as we said, or as I stated, someone has to be party to the appeal. So who are these appeal parties? What does that mean to Medicare? And first of all, it's that they have to have some form of decision, some financial interest, something going on with it. So of course, the patient can file an appeal. It's their claim after all, right? You're filing for their service, so they have the right to do an appeal. A provider or supplier can file. That makes sense. If it's you're filing to Medicare for payment or for non-payment, maybe applying to deductible, something like that, it is you as an interested party. You are the provider or supplier. You represent them. You have the right to file an appeal. Okay. Other parties with financial interests. This could be a lawyer or a family member. Sometimes they have the right to file an appeal, and the reason that they do is because they have a financial interest in what's going on. One thing I want you to keep in mind when we talk about some of these different things, the patient can appoint someone to work on their behalf. This is not the provider who filed the claim. You have your own appeal rights, and it's a separate function. But they could appoint a different provider to act on their behalf regarding the appeal. That's done through the appointment of representative form, and it is done with very specific elements. So please make sure you are aware of that. What we've done here on the bottom link is giving you information from the Medicare Claims Processing Manual in Chapter 29 on who may file an appeal. A couple people weren't real familiar with what was going on with these links or how they would get there. If you simply select the blue and underlines, I know it's kind of an off blue in this case, it will automatically open. It will automatically open the information. It's just taking a second here. So that what we'll do is it will bring you exactly where you need to be down into the chapter, and then you just have to find out section that you need there, okay? What we're going to do is we're just going to run through this basics of a claim decision. Again, remembering that, yes, this is talking about a claim decision, but most of this information will also apply to an overpayment. Okay? But it's just this is a great resource. It's the Medicare Claims Processing Manual, Chapter 29, Appeals of a Claims Decision. So if you're in the Medicare CMS.gov website, let me show you how to find that. You go to Medicare, you go to Regulations and Guidance, and then you're going to go to the word Manuals. Internet-only manuals is where this is all stored. These are our day-to-day operating instructions. Go ahead and go to 100-04 Medicare Claims Processing Manual, and then scroll down and down and down and down, and you will eventually come to Chapter 29, and that's what we just showed you. So that's just one resource, and this is where a lot of our information came from as we get going here. So the Medicare appeals process is divided into 5 different levels. Okay. The first level is a redetermination. The second level is a reopening. The third level is a hearing. The fourth level is the counsel review. And the fifth level is a judicial review. I will tell you, we're going to walk through each one of these levels in a bit more. So it's important to make sure that you do listen and that you are getting that information. A couple of things to keep in mind. Part of the appeals process is that you must file in order. If you move to level 2 or level 4 without having done the previous levels, it will not be considered. It's not considered a valid appeal request. File it in order. We'll talk more about that as we go with different timeframes and things like that. Before I get too far into the next set of information, which goes through the different levels, I was asked about the amount in controversy. And the amount in controversy is the difference between what you were expected to get paid and what you got paid. It does not apply to all 5 levels. It applies to level 3, the Office of Medicare Hearings and Appeals, or the hearing level, and level 5, the judicial review in the federal district court. We'll talk more about that. The amount in controversy is updated annually. Okay, so it's updated annually. It's based in the Consumer Price Index, so it can go up, down, or stay the same. It's done on an annual review. The question being, do I have to file it all based in one claim, or could I combine claims to meet the amount in controversy? CMS does allow combined claims, but they have to be for like or similar issues. They do not have to be for the same patient, but they have to be from the same provider. So hopefully that answers those questions on the amount in controversy. Again, just a really brief thing, but remember it only applies to level 3 and level 5. So the first level we want to talk about in our overview process is the redetermination. And a redetermination is a level 1 appeal done by the Medicare administrative contractor who originally processed the claim. So if you're in Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, you will send your redetermination to WPS. Indiana and Michigan as well. We also have some various providers across the entire United States. They would also use WPS. Who processed your claim? That's the Medicare administrative contractor who's going to do the redetermination. When we do this redetermination, we have to have an independent staff review. That means that if a staff looked at it previously, they cannot look at it again. So what we have done here at WPS is to make separate areas. Medical review is different than our redetermination. Our redetermination area or appeals area actually has separate nurses that could complete medical review. We keep it independent. We keep them separate to meet this requirement from CMS. You do have to file in writing, and you have 120 days from the date on the remit advice or the overpayment letter. It's 120 days. That is one thing that some people do miss. And if you do miss it, then you must incorporate a letter that explains why you missed it and why you feel we should waive that 120 days. So you want to make sure you're meeting that 120 days. Start there. In writing does mean it can be filed on paper through our portal. That's another way, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. We do have 60 days to complete the initial portion of the redetermination. That means to give you a decision or to issue you a decision. So we do want you to be aware that this is not done instantly. It's not done within 15 days. We have 60 days to complete this. A decision can be an uphold of the original decision, a partial uphold or a partial overturn, either way, of the original decision, or a complete overturn of the original decision. If we uphold or give you a partial uphold, we will mail you a letter explaining our reasons and giving you further appeal rights. If we overturn, we will put the claim back through the processing system with the information needed, and then you'll get a new remittance advice, a new remittance notice. So that's important for you to understand. And you're hopefully aware of that. Okay. The next level of appeal is a reconsideration. So reconsideration level 2. This is done by a qualified independent contractor. It is a separate contractor, not your Medicare administrative contractor. They then look at whether or not they agree with what we did and if we had the right to do with what we did. So some different things like that. We'll talk more about that as we get into it. You do have 180 days to file, and that's from the remittance advice from the first level of appeal when we overturn and we give you a new one, or from a MAC decision letter. Now, the MAC decision letter is when we have a partial or a complete uphold. That's the letter we're talking about. So the letter that we mail you. What they'll do is they're going to look for supporting documentation or information. So if you filed it at level 1, they will review any information filed during the level 1 request, but look for any additional information you have sent in on the level 2 request as well. So one thing I said is additional information. So if they send the same information over and over again, they'll review the same information. However, does it help anyone? And that's the question you want to ask. We'll talk more about that. We'll give you a couple more tips on that a little bit later on. That's a reconsideration. The next one is the Office of Medicare Hearings and Appeals, OMHA Administrative Law Judge. You may hear this commonly referred to as an administrative law judge or an ALJ hearing. This is under the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And what happens is you actually file a request to them, and this sitting judge has a hearing for you. Now, it could be a phone hearing. It doesn't have to be an in-person or anything like that. If you choose to waive the formal hearing, you do have the right to choose to have an attorney adjudicator. And that's going to allow you then to sit before this attorney adjudicator. They'll make the decision and move it on. Please keep in mind, you do have to let the Office of Medicare Hearings and Appeals know that in advance so that they don't schedule you with the judge and then go back and forth. Okay. An attorney adjudicator is licensed attorney. They're employed by OMHA. They're responsible for reviewing the case and making the decision, just like a judge would do. So what is the case review? They hear both sides. They conduct a review of the case. They base it on the laws and the facts. So what law is in effect? What facts are in effect? What did you give us? What supporting documentation did you submit to them that you didn't support? Keep in mind when you're submitting new documentation, you'll need to justify why you couldn't have submitted it at a previous level. If we didn't know it, how could we at level 1 have considered it? If level 2 didn't know it, how could the qualified independent contractor or QUIC have considered it? They want to know why you're doing that. Now, an administrative law judge, again, because you are waiving a hearing, they can make that decision and it is considered a binding decision. You must file these requests within 60 days, and you have 60 days from the remittance advice should it be overturned, or you have 60 days from the QUIC letter should it be upheld. And so you must follow again. It's a shorter time frame, right? So you don't want to miss those days, because if you miss those days without an additional statement as to the reason why you missed that, they won't consider it. Okay, so you want to make sure you're getting all that done. This is the first level in which an amount in controversy applies. This amount in controversy is fairly low. It's $100 and some. Now, the reason I say 100 and some is it does change annually. So I will show you in just a moment where you can find that so that you are aware of it. They do have 60 days to complete. Remember, this is the first level that they're going to look at that true legality. We're going to look at it based in what CMS has indicated. What are the rules? What are the regulations? What are we being told to do? What are the policies that are in place? The administrative law judge, they're a law judge, so they're going to look at it from a legal standpoint as well. So all the rules that are in place, and are those rules legally supposed to be in place? So there's a variety of different factors on what they're going to do. Let's move on from the administrative law judge, and let's move on to the Medicare Appeals Council review. Sometimes just referred to as the council or the appeals council. You can hear a variety of different things with this one. They're actually part of the Department of Health and Human Services, which is above the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The Departmental Appeal Board does take your request for 60 days. So once you get the remit notice or the previous letter, you get 60 days to file to them. They don't have an amount in controversy, so you can file for whatever reason that you want to look at, but you do need to explain why you feel the previous decision was incorrect or did not consider fully what you meant, and you need to explain that again at any given level. They do have approximately 90 days to complete their review. Now we say approximately because we can't ever guarantee a time frame for anyone. I can tell you that we are working within our 90 days and we are tentatively still under our 90-day process. The last level, which is level 5, is a judicial review. This is in a federal district court, so it is exactly what it sounds like. You go to a federal district court, they'll put you on a docket, they'll put you all of those different things. They do not have a time frame to complete it. It's not like we have 90 days to complete it. You'll be put onto the docket, and whenever it gets to be your turn, it'll be your turn. Keep in mind that you do have to file for 60 days. Again, we're looking at the remittance advice or we're looking at the council letter, whatever you need to do there. There is an amount in controversy, and this does change annually. Okay, it can go up, can go down, or it actually could stay the same. So we do not know how long this could take. This is, varies in factors, and it really does depend on the court document. One of the things you heard me say is the amount of controversy changes annually. So let me show you before I leave this where you can find the level 3 and the level 5 current amount in controversies. I think it's easiest to go to the website. And again, we're going to go to the CMS website. Now, we're not going to use the internet-only manuals or those day-to-day operating instructions. Because it changes annually, CMS doesn't manualize it. Normally what they'll do is actually put it on their website in the appeals section. So we're going to go to Medicare because that's what we're talking about here. We're going to read through all the different things on the left side, and we're going to choose the options for appeals and grievances. Once we do that, we're talking about original Medicare appeals. Original Medicare is fee-for-service, Part A and B. That's what we're looking for. Once that opens, you can actually see that this has got a lot of great information. It's going to give you some really high-level stuff, but it's going to get some more in-depth stuff. But I want you to note the left side where it says original Medicare appeals, and then it gives you all of the different levels. This will actually give you different forms and things like that CMS has. But if you go to level 3 or level 5, and we're just going to go to level 3 first, it'll actually talk to you about the process, everything I just basically explained. But if you look in this paragraph right here, it'll tell you what the amount in controversy for 2025 is, and it's $190. Same thing will happen with level 5. It's going to give you a lot of information I just explained, but then if you come down here, it'll say it's $1,900 for the amount in controversy. Now, again, this goes up and down, so I always recommend taking a look at it because it's based on the year you're filing the appeal. That's the amount in controversy they're talking about. It's not based in a data service or anything like that, and there has been some confusion over that. We don't want you to miss out on the amount in controversy or anything. So, okay, if we scroll down a little bit more, you can see Medicare appeals good cause for late filing. This will help you through if you're outside of the timeframes to file, but you have to explain and follow through with what they're telling you to do. If you don't, you will not be considered for the appeal. It will be dismissed. Okay. I'm going to jump back to my slides because my next slide is on dismissals. So what is a dismissal? And it's when Medicare basically does not accept your appeal. We will not consider your appeal. We're going to dismiss it. We're going to not process it. We're not going to consider it. So you sent it in, but why would we do this? Remember I said way back at the beginning, you have to be party to the appeal. So if you're the provider and you accept an assignment, we can accept your appeal. That makes sense. We're going to pay you. You get a financial. If you're the patient, well, hey, it's for you. So therefore, yep, the patient will take. Again, sometimes the family members, things like that, or an appointed representative. So if you're a provider who is not has no financial burden in this. Maybe you're the primary care manager. Yes, you can work on behalf of the patient, but you must have an appointment of representative form to do that. Otherwise, you're not party to the appeal. The appeal can be withdrawn. We'll dismiss it. If you send us a note saying, hey, we don't want to do this appeal anymore, we'll dismiss it. If it was not requested timely, and remember, we said it's 120, 180, 90, 90, 90. If you miss any of those time frames, or I'm sorry, 90, 60, 60. If you miss any of the time frames, then you want to make sure that you are getting those in. Otherwise, we will automatically dismiss it. So if you miss the 120 days on the first time around and you don't have any of those appeal rights that I went through that I showed you where it was on the website, we won't even consider it. And also you won't be given other appeal rights. You won't be able to move on to second, third, fourth, or fifth level. So make sure you follow your appeals days to file, okay? Again, 120, 180, 60, 60, 60. Hopefully I said that correctly. 120, 180, 60, 60, 60. Okay. And so when you're looking at a dismissal, remember it does not count as a valid cause. It's not going to count for anything. We're not going to be able to look at it. Also, if you don't have appeal rights, we're going to talk more about that in just a moment and how you can determine that. But before we do that, I'd like to throw in some questions that you guys had, and then we'll open it up for questions you've asked. Okay. So first question is, when we're over timely filing and appealing extensions, do you first need the claim to be submitted for timely filing denial, or can you mail the appeal and proof of timely filing as the first step? I'm going to tell you that if you appeal a timely filing denial, it will automatically be dismissed. This is not an appealable issue. Not level 1 appealable, it's not any level appealable. There is no claim determination that has been made. The proper steps when you look at this is to request from the claims manager a consideration, to have them look at it. So you're going to send a letter. Inside that letter, you're going to tell them why you feel you should be allowed outside that claims filing deadline, which is 1 year from the date of service or 1 year from the date of discharge. So we'll have Aline put some information down in that chat for you, and hopefully that will help you out. Does an appeal have to be submitted online through WPS website? No, it doesn't have to be. I'm going to say no, but then I'm going to give you the best way to do that. Please submit it online. This is the best way to get us the information, to upload the documentation, to have it all come in at once. This is the fastest way to get us. Why? There's no mail time. There's no anything else going on. So please use our portal if possible and submit that way. When is it appropriate to file an appeal versus a redetermination? Wasn't really sure what you're asking me here, because a redetermination is a level 1 appeal. So it really is the same thing. So to the person that asked that question, can you help me out? If you're talking about a reopening, that's a separate process. And I can show you a website for that, but I need to know if that's what you're talking about first. In the meantime, while you get through that and see if that person responds back, I would like to ask Aline if we do have any questions in the chat.
We have gotten a couple questions, so I'm just going to go in order. The first question comes from Liz, and she says, can you use an outside provider's note to help support your appeal?
Yeah, Liz, actually, in some cases that would definitely help support your appeal. And the times that I'm definitely thinking of that would be like an order or referring provider. Yes, their note may help do that. There are other times when it may not help. And if we don't, or you don't know that information and you have no record of that, you're not going back and forth with it, there's nothing there, it may not help us to really understand that process because it wasn't known at the time. So yes, you can. I don't want to make it sound like you can't, but please indicate why or how you knew that or what it was used for, something to help us understand what that information was used for, why you knew it, that you had it at the time of service, instead of, hey, I got this after the fact and this is what's going on there. Aline, do you have anything to add to that one?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Are you ready for another question?
Yes, I am.
All right, this one comes from Lori, and she says, does Medicare accept corrected HCFA 1500 claim forms electronically? We've had some overpayments due to a reversed charge, and our clearinghouse does not allow corrected 1,500 claims to go to Medicare.
So, okay, so a couple of things are going on here. So you said we had some reverse charges and our clearinghouse doesn't allow. If they were already submitted and you're already paid, you could appeal the overpayment if you're trying to keep the money, but I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're talking about. If you're actually sending an electronic claim, yes, we do take those. They are not considered corrected claims. It would be a new claim. So if we're taking money back, or what are you doing with your reverse charges, help us understand what's going on with that. It's not like a UB04 or A37I where you can actually go directly into the system. That's not going to happen. Now, I say that, and then I'm going to give you another option. Depending on what you're correcting, you could go in, you, not the clearinghouse, you can go in and do a clerical error reopening and look or put some additional information in, but that's for certain types of errors. So it's not necessarily an appeal. I'll see if Aline, once we get done with these question and answers, if she could look up the article on our website for clerical error reopening and give you a reference for that. But otherwise, you could simply send in a new claim form as well. So if you've sent in money back or you've done that, you could send in a new claim, whether electronic or on paper, and get that claim processed that way. That would be another win at 1,500. So I'm not really sure exactly what we're looking at here and what the error is. So Aline, do we have any further questions?
Yes, thank you for that. And Liz thanked you too for her first question. Next question comes from Anne. Are you able to submit a medical level 1 appeal on a medical necessity line denial that was billed with a GZ modifier?
Okay. I know a GZ modifier. Hello? Okay, so I know a GZ, I'm going to look up a GZ modifier, making sure that I'm verifying my own information before I answer this one. So what I'm on is the WPS website. I'm just going to search modifier GZ. I know it's one of the ABN modifiers, but I need to know which one it is. Okay, well, it's not going to come up that way. Let's do this way. Topic center, claims. Let's do this. GZ. Okay, it's going to be ABN modifier. So I'm not finding this right off the top of my head. And I believe a GZ modifier is one that you would append to say that you didn't get GY, that you did not get the ABN. If I'm incorrect, Aline, can you help me out with that? I'm just struggling to remember which modifier that is. Do you know?
You are correct, Tom, in what you're saying. If it was billed with a GZ modifier, I'm not sure. I mean, you're telling us it wasn't medically necessary, I believe. So
right.
We might have to look into that one a little bit further.
So I can tell you that with most modifiers, when you bill them such as that, if you feel it is medically necessary, then when you file the appeal saying it's medically necessary, we're simply going to remove the GZ and go on from there. We're not really going to look at the records or anything because you're telling us you billed the GZ in error. That's what it means. It's the same thing as a GY. Yep, it is a benefit. Whoops, shouldn't have billed it with that. So if you're trying to get us to do something different, I'm not sure what you're trying to get us to do with that. So again, whoever asked that question, put some more information in chat. But if you're appealing something with a GZ on it, we're simply going to remove it and let it go through because you're now telling us it is what it is. If anyone from our appeals department that happens to be on has more input on that, you guys can definitely throw something in chat for Aline and I will check that out as well. In the meantime, Aline, do we have anything else?
Yes, we do. Let me scroll back up here. We've had issues using the WPS portal to submit our redeterminations. We get a tracking number, but then look later and it says not accepted. Has this been fixed? We called the customer service and they said they were aware of the problem, but if we get that message, we need to mail the redetermination.
As far as I know, that's still correct. If, again, something has changed. Customer service would definitely be the proper area to look for. If you haven't seen anything come out via our e-news as well, which is that email message that comes out, that would also be another mechanism. But as far as I know, that's still correct. Again, if someone from our the appeals department has more information, that'd be great.
Hi, Tom. This is Aline, and I have an update on the GZ modifier. We actually wouldn't remove the GZ modifier if the provider doesn't ask us to or tell us that it was an error. So that's just a little clarification on that question. And that's all we have at this time.
Okay, thank you. Anything else before I go back to the slides and go on?
Nothing else at this time.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the level 1 issues and tips. And this is where you're kind of going to get a little bit more information that you might need. Now, the reason that we're going to focus on level 1 is because that's what we do, right? Here at WPS, we process the redetermination at level 1. So we really can kind of talk about some of those different things where some of the other levels, we may not have as much information, okay? So level 1, first tip, follow the calendar days to request an appeal. This was a question that was actually asked to us, and is it calendar or business days? And it's calendar days. So if you're not following those calendar days and you're saying, wait, I'm going to use a business time frame, it doesn't work that way. One other question was, if we mail the appeal, do we get extra days? I'm going to assume that you need like mailing time, and we can allow for 5 extra days just for mail time. So maybe, but again, it's better not to chance it, right? Let's make sure that we get that in. Let's make sure we follow the 120, 180, 60, 60, 60, so that there isn't any issue. The time frame is when it has to be in our mailroom or in the mailroom of the processing entity. So for ours, that's level 1, remember, and that means it has to be to our mailroom so that we can have it within that time frame. If it's not, it will be dismissed as not timely filing. Make sure that you're aware of that. Next, this one sounds super basic, yet it still continues to be a problem. Make sure you file to the correct level within the right calendar days. Did everyone catch that? Make sure you file to the correct level within the right number of calendar days. So what that means is if we've made a determination, CMS has indicated that it needs to go on, and go on means it needs to move to the qualified independent contractor for a reconsideration. We've done our portion. So now you move from the 120 calendar days where you had to file it with us to 180 calendar days to file it to them. If you don't feel like we've made a decision within the 90 days from your filing date, you can move it to the qualified independent contractor, but it's not for a reconsideration. They're not going to make a decision. They're going to look at it and say, yes or no, we made the right time frame being 90 days. And if we did not, they will reprimand it back to us and say, make a decision, because you haven't done that yet. Do this. And we can do that. So please make sure you go in the proper level or the proper order. Also, if you were to send something to us and you're actually wanting a hearing, there's not much we can do to get that timely filing, to get that to them. We can forward it. We will do those types of things, but it really is your responsibility to make sure it gets filed timely. So you think about that, and let's say that you're at 85 days, you sent it to WPS, WPS gets it, we realize, no, you're actually requesting a different level. We're going to forward it on, but what if that's outside the 90 days? It doesn't count. It doesn't waive the timely filing because, by the way, the timely filing is the appeal timely filing, not the claims timely filing, because you didn't send it to the proper entity, and Medicare says, hey, it's your job to get it to the proper entity. You should be responsible for knowing which one it's going to go to, okay? So we want to make sure you're doing that in the correct level, in the correct order, and make sure everything moves through. When you go to the correct level, please explain why you disagree with that information. What happened and why you disagreed. That's part of going to the correct level. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about valid requests, because this may sound like it should be very easy, but we still get dismissals for invalid requests. So the first thing, you can use our website. This is for us. at level 1. There are other websites that have different levels and different websites. So you want to make sure you're using the appropriate website. You can file for a level 1 with our form. This is the preferred method. Otherwise, CMS does have forms. Our form is more specific. Okay. If you choose not to do this and you want to write a letter, we do have to have certain elements, and they are listed for this slide. So if you miss any of these elements, anything, it will be dismissed. It's not a valid request. That's why we recommend using our form on our website. So let me stop here for a minute and go to our website. So the part where you can file is actually going to be right here. This is where you can log in, get a user ID, do all of that. You can register right here. This is called the Secure Net Access Portal, or the portal. There is a portal user manual. If you go to the portal user manual, you can scroll down and see you can do a lot of different things. One of the things that you're going to scroll down is to come to the claims, and then what can you do through the portal, okay? Overpayments, appeals, all of those claim status, Part B claim submission, clerical error reopening. This is one, and we talked about this from a 1500 claim form. Now, I will tell you, yes, this is for that process. Okay, I don't want to make it seem like it's not there. It is here and it is available to you. A lot of people on a UB04 or an 837I, they use the direct data entry system, going and correct it directly. That's why the clerical error reopening is commonly for a 1500 or 837P built into the MCS system. But if we continue down, we do actually hit the word appeals. What are you looking to do? And each one will then tell you the steps you need to do. So I'm telling you, take time, read through this information. If you haven't done that, okay, yep, you can actually make it easier on yourself by doing this. Also, if you've never signed up for our portal and you are interested in filing appeals, do you know that you can submit documentation? You can do all that right here, right through the portal. So take the time to read about it and learn about it. I'm really going to advocate that, just so everyone is aware. I do think it's the best way to do it. Now, if you choose to send a form, I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'm going to be, right now I'm in J5, which is Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Part B, which is line of business, 1500 claim forms, and 837P. If I go to the topic center and I go to the word appeals, we will have a variety of articles and information in the bottom, the appeals form selector, article on how to file an appeal, right? But also you're going to have forms. This is one area people overlook right here, this green bar where it says guides, news and updates, FAQs, and forms. Go ahead and click on forms. By selecting this, you can find out, hey, here's your appointment of representative. Here's your clerical error reopenings. You guys can kind of see how that works, right? So you can get all of these different pieces without having to go any further. Here's your redetermination request or level 1 appeal. Now, the reason, again, that we recommend doing this form is because it has a lot of information that we need very quickly. However, if you are using the portal, please don't file both. You only need to do one. Only do one. But this is just a sample of what you'll see. Okay, and it'll walk you through all the different things you need to know. If you do this, it will give you all of the different information you need, which is great for us. It'll tell you where to fax it, how to get it to us. Again, really good information, just a lot of information you need right up front without having to go through a lot of the different processes. Works the same if you happen to be in Part A. You can download the form. Oops, I'm in the Part B form, sorry. So go up to Forms, and you can download the redetermination Part A form. Same process, same information. Okay, so please take time to do that. Somebody asked, is there a way on a remittance notice to tell whether, to tell whether or not that a appeal can be filed? If you start at level 1, the answer is yes, and it's an MA01, appeal level 1 is available. So if you're on a remittance advice and you're looking, please check for MA01 in the remarks code. It's going to explain, hey, you actually could do an appeal. All right. Now, keep in mind, you won't have this for an overpayment. You're going to get a letter on the overpayment that doesn't have a remarks code like that in the overpayment. Okay. So again, we've talked about making sure that it's appealable, but what happens if it's not appealable? Well, first, have we ever made a decision on it? If we haven't, that's called unprocessable claims or return to provider. unprocessable, or return to provider. Unprocessable is used in the 1500 claim form, 837P. Return is the UB04 or 837I claim forms, so it just depends on how they're being billed. What's not appealable? Well, a provider can't appeal something that isn't covered in the law. So if the law says it's not appealable, it's not appealable. That's why we showed you that one section in the Medicare claims process, or I'm sorry, in the Medicare benefit manual. It's the lower chapter that had that in it. Providers cannot appeal the fee schedule amounts. If it's a fee schedule amount, we don't set that amount. It's not set by us. It's not something we can do. One exception to that is if you go to the Medicare physician fee schedule and you see a C for pricing indicator, that is a carrier price or a contractor price. That one would be appealable, but you have to have medical records to show why we should be paying it differently. Can you appeal retroactive eligibility? Not sure what you're appealing with that. If you're trying to file a claim due to retroactive eligibility, that's timely filing, and that's not appealable, which also then works into timely filing. If you miss your timely filing deadline for any reason, it's not appealable. Please follow the timely filing guidelines. We had to give you a couple of pieces of information for that. This next slide is just a reminder. Patients have the right to appeal anything they want. So even though you may append something saying, hey, it's a GY, it's statutorily excluded, it's not part of the Medicare coverage, what it will do is allow the patient to file an appeal. We had a couple of questions that came in where they had filed it with GY, but they got a request from us asking for information. This is not uncommon when the patient files the appeal. We have to get the information somehow, and that's why we would send out a request. So that's where it's probably coming from, was a patient file. I didn't have any specific examples, so I couldn't forward it on to my appeal staff and be like, hey, can you tell me what happened with this one? It was just a generic or a general question, so that's my speculation for that. Can you file on the patient's behalf? And I did talk about this one, and yes, you can, as long as you are not party to, which means that they do have to appoint you. Here's the information on that, some more information on what we've shown you already. So yeah, we want to make sure you are aware you can file on their behalf. Let's run through some more pre-submitted questions, and then we'll go through the set of questions that are in the chat. So, can you help the patient file an appeal? Yes, we just talked about that. The patient can actually sign and date it, but you may help them by giving them medical records or supplying them with medical records. You may help them by understanding the rules and regulations. You may also help them by referring them to 1-800-MEDICARE, which is their call center for where they can get information. Or you can refer them to Medicare.gov. Medicare.gov is the website that they use. So while we would use, as providers and the Medicare administrative contractors, CMS.gov, the patients use Medicare.gov. Can you file on the patient's behalf? And again, I've said this a couple of different times, but I'm going to keep reiterating it. Yes, you can file on the patient's behalf if they appoint you a representative, but only if you are not a party to the appeal. If you are a party to the appeal, you can't file on their behalf. How to send an attachment with the appeal? I'm not sure exactly how you're filing the appeal, but if you're filing it via the portal, you can actually attach it right away. You can have that information. If you're filing it and you're looking for something like a fax or whatever, you can incorporate it there. But go back to that website, follow the instructions that I showed you in the portal user manual, because you can actually upload the documentation even if you fax the appeal. So there's a variety of different things you can do, but please make sure you use a cover letter and information explaining that so that we do understand and we do get the information attached correctly. What do you do if an appeal is denied? I'm going to assume you mean it's upheld, or that we upheld the original decision. And if that is the case, you would move on to the next level if you disagree and if you meet the criteria, for instance, the amount in controversy for level 3 or 5. So it's about moving on to the next level. If you mean it's dismissed, can you tell me why it was dismissed? And if you disagree with that, move it on to the next level. Tell them why you disagree with the dismissal. They'll take a look at it. If they agree it should have been a decision made, they can send that or reprimand that back. We can make a decision based on their review. So I'm not really sure what you say when you're saying deny, what you mean by that. So hopefully I got those two situations answered. Aline, any comments or questions?
Thanks, Tom. We do have a question. What do you advise me to do when I cannot find the claim in the portal, but we received the EOB and an appeal is necessary?
Always use, as long as you have the EOB, then you should have a claim number. And so if the appeal is necessary, it's telling you, hey, do the appeal, and you can't find it in the portal. I'm not sure why you can't find it in the portal, but you can do a manual entry into the portal, or you could do the paper appeals form if you wanted to and send it in that way. Again, don't skip your appeal rights just because you can't find it or whatever the situation is. I'm not sure what's happening there, why it wouldn't be in the portal, but you could always file in paper if you needed to. So please make sure you follow that 120 days though, so that we get it in time, so we don't just miss it for timely filing. Any of those types of things would be my advice. So really file it in paper, or take a look at the other options on how to file it. Anything
That's
else?
good advice. I would also say, make sure that you're looking under the right set of provider numbers if you have access to more than one within the portal. And you might even consider calling customer service and have them help you look for it. They might be able to give you direction that way as well. Next question. If I have a lot of appeals to send, can I send a spreadsheet that contains all of the appeals, or do you recommend that I send them individually?
I don't think that I don't have a recommendation. I'm going to throw it out to the appeals staff. Maybe they can throw something in chat for me. But, the spreadsheets are great. That they do come in paper, and it does make it a little bit different. However, the electronic ones, which you can put into the system and get moved through faster, which means we actually receive them faster, we can look at them faster, we can consider them faster. So, I always tell people file electronically, but I don't want to make it sound like you couldn't file the other way. I guess I'm not really sure, and I don't really have advice on that one. Oline, do you have any advice on that?
Personally, my recommendation would be to send them individually, because they're probably going to get, if we're talking about paper, they're going to be controlled in, they're going to be scanned in. We need a set of documentation to go with each of those. So my recommendation personally would be to send them separately.
And that makes sense too. Again, I would always encourage you to submit through the portal. I think I've said that a lot of times. So I just think it's the best option is the portal. So, and actually, yeah, so I want to reiterate, coming from our appeals department, one of them just gave me some chat here and said, yeah, definitely the portal is the best way to do it. So individually through the portal is always going to be the best option that you have. So any other questions?
Yeah, one just came in. Abby says, if an appeal is reviewed and upheld and the information that is being returned on the decision is referencing that we are missing documentation, but it was included, are your options for these to be re-reviewed, or is there a contact we can pass along these examples? Did you get that?
I did, and I will tell you. So if we've upheld it and you want to keep that one moving along, you do have to move along to the next option. You could write in the letter what hey, this is included on page 16, paragraph 3. I'm making that up, but help us understand, or help the next level, the qualified independent contractor, really know what is there, that you aren't missing it, whatever you want to do with that. Unfortunately, once we've done it, it's not a re-review. It is moving it along or up the missing level. We can't go back through and do another review of it. So.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely when you pass that along, point out where the missing documentation is located, any of those level of appeals. Have someone take a look at your documentation before you send it in, because you know exactly where it is, because you're familiar with your electronic medical record per se. If you're sending it paper, tab it, highlight it, something like that, maybe just help draw it out. Maybe not highlighting, because sometimes that doesn't scan well, but anything you can do to put out to the reviewer would be helpful.
Awesome. Yeah. And
the last question we have.
Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to, again, we've done a bunch of these resources. So you guys, I'm just going to kind of scroll through these. Original fee for service website, we looked at that. The booklet, this is just seriously a booklet that's going to give you the high level overview that I went through, some different pieces of information. It's a CMS booklet. You can use the link to take a look at it if you're interested. Our website, we did go through the guides and resources. We talked about FAQ forms. So all of those different things are available to you. Reopening, I did have Aline put this one into the chat feature because this is not a formal appeals process and I didn't want it to get it confused. So please make sure that you're following that advice. Let's see, what else we got? Oh, back to some more questions. So we've answered most of the questions. Two different ones that I really do want to focus on is how do we check on an appeal? I'm going to assume you mean check the status. And again, use the portal, use the portal. You know, you can check the status of the appeal submitted. So you can actually go ahead and do that. And so it's really the easiest way to do that. Why doesn't the WPS portal always work when submitting a redetermination? I'm not really sure, but I know that if it doesn't work, you do have to file it in paper. I haven't seen anything else on that other than what I just commented on. Is there any changes planned for the website upgrade? And no, we have no functionality changes planned. Now the upgrade itself did change the look and feel. Of course, there will always be changes in the future, but if you're talking about the current ones, no, that's pretty much done. It was just primarily the look and feel to get that updated. Also, the search engine was different, and the search engine does affect how quickly things can happen and things like that. So I'm not really sure exactly what you were talking about that. Let's see. Again, one more time, and I'm going to reiterate this. What's the best way to file the appeal, especially if you're starting at level 1? And the answer is file it individually on a claim-by-claim basis in the portal. Make sure you get the information there. You can automatically upload your documentation or any information that you need. So make sure that that is all done. I want to just, again, ask Aline, do we have any questions before I jump into the wrap-up here?
We do not have any other questions at this time.
Okay, so just to wrap up, you will be getting an email from us. It's going to say Certificate of Achievement, and the email comes in and it does have a link to the survey, which is the first box on your slide. The second box is actually your certificate. We do post contact hours. We do not give you CEUs. Those are done by governing bodies. So if they choose to accept this certificate, this is what you need, okay? If you have follow-up questions, we will take those for the next 7 days, and you can email those into us, making sure that you do use the appeals in the topics, in the subject line for the topic. Once we get those in, if we need additional help, we will actually reach out to our appeals department. They're pretty good at getting back to us and helping us through anything. You've actually seen a couple of comments come through to them, so we want to thank them for their support today, but let you know that they're still available for, you know, helping us out and making sure we get you guys what you need. You will be given the opportunity to take a survey on this education event in WPS and how we do as a whole. A couple of ways to take that survey. Go to the chat right now. Use the link. Give me the survey while I continue to talk, or just take the survey. I'm also going to give you an opportunity when this webinar closes, and it's going to look like the lower picture on here. I know it's going to have a little triangle on top. It says external site. That's us, WPS, taking you to the survey. So WebEx says, hey, it's an external site, just so you know, your host, WPS, is asking you to go here and do that. And also, if you're doing this as an encore presentation, we're still going to give you the chance to take that survey. We really want your survey feedback. That's going to be in the upper picture, the online survey picture. So that's why we put those different surveys options. What should you include on the survey? Always include the good, the bad, and the ugly. In other words, what I did well, what I could improve on, or what would help you understand further, what we missed, anything like that. And did the presentation and the resources that I showed you help you? What could give you more resources? That's what we call the ugly. So again, the good, the bad, and the ugly, help me understand it all. But also never forget to include suggestions for future education, whether it's related to appeals or not, whether it's related to a redetermination or anything else. We really need those suggestions. We want to get you what you need, okay? So that's all I have today. So thanks for attending. We appreciate your time. You can, again, take that survey. We encourage you to do that. Remember, good, bad, ugly, all of it that you can get for us. Review the live events page for any current registration or upcoming registration. Don't forget to review the encore plays that we have available for you. There are a variety of ways to do that. So on behalf of myself, Aline, and all of WPS, thanks for attending, and we appreciate your participation. We look forward to your survey comments and hope that you will join us in future events. You may now disconnect.